Hey everybody, welcome to another Crack-A-Pack Tuesday. We've got another pack of Dragons of Tarkir here, and we're going to open it and see what we find. Well, first up we've got a Champion of Erishin. This is a 3 and a white Hound Warrior with lifelink, and it's a 3-2. I'm actually a fairly big fan of this card. I like it. It's not awesome. It's not, I hope, going to be the first pick. But a 3-2 lifelinker for 4 is totally okay. Yeah, it dies in combat to a lot of things, but getting a 3 life gain off of it, plus ideally getting through with this guy sometimes, just awesome. The fact that he's a decent possibility of getting bolstered is just all that much better. Not a first pick, but relatively high pick for me. Next up we have Grave Purge. This is a 2 and a black instant. You can put any number of target creature cards from your graveyard on top of your library and draw a card. Now any number can be 0, so you could just pay 3 mana to cycle this card. I've seen it done. It's not an awesome card. It doesn't quite have a home. It doesn't go in aggro. It doesn't go in control because you're not going to have that many creatures anyways. But it can be useful. It's going to be a card that I pick up when it happens to be there. I'm in black. There's nothing else for me. I take it, and I'll often side it out. So not the pick, of course. Next up we have Tread Upon. Tread Upon is 1 and a green instant. Target creature gets +2/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. Totally fine combat trick. It's not quite Giant Growth. It's not quite Awaken the Bear. It's in the middle of those two, but totally fine. Not first pickable, of course, though. Next up we have Epic Confrontation, another green combat trick, but a little bit of a better one, and not necessarily a combat trick. It has many other uses. 1 and a green sorcery, so actually, sorry, not a combat trick at all. I always think it's an instant. Target creature you control gets +1/+2 until end of turn. It fights target creature you don't control. So your creature gets bigger. Hopefully that +2 toughness means that it's going to kill something and not just trade with something, and you get to removal. So it's basically removal. It's the removal that green gets, and it's totally fine. Not first pickable, but totally fine. Next up is Tormenting Voice. This is a 1 and a red. As an additional cost to cast, Tormenting Voice, discard a card. Draw 2 cards. So you get to kind of super rummage. You discard a card and you get 2 in return. Ideally, you're throwing away a land or a card that's just not going to happen. I find every time I have this card, I end up playing it. If I end up playing it, I end up playing it in desperation mode. You know, I'm desperate for a land, and I throw away my really good, but unfortunately expensive creature to hopefully get something, and that's not the kind of game I like to be playing. That's not the kind of game I like to draft towards. So Tormenting Voice is just a card that I don't really like in general. I'll play it if I need a 23rd card, but I'm never really happy about it. Next up is Keeper of the Lens. This is a 1 mana 1/2 that says that you can look at face down cards you don't control. Big whoop. Don't play this card. It's just bad. Next up, we have Reckless Imp. Reckless Imp is a 2 and a black 2/2 flyer that can't block, and you can dash it for 2. I'm totally fine with this guy. He's not awesome. He's not a bomb. He's not a high pick. He's just a totally fine role filler in any sort of black aggressive deck. I've even played him in a little bit more control-y black-blue decks, just as a guy to get in some early damage. Totally fine, and left unchecked, he can win the game. So totally fine with him, not first picking, though. Next up, we have Elusive Spellfist. I'm not a huge fan of this card. It's a 1 and a blue for a 1/3, and it's got Fake Prowess. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Elusive Spellfist gets +1/+0 until end of turn and can't be blocked. Making this into a 2/3 that can't be blocked at the cost of a spell, you do, of course, get whatever that spell did, just is not remotely high enough impact for me, so I can't really justify playing this guy ever. Next up, we have Artful Maneuver. This is a combat trick. It's a 1 and a white instant. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and rebounds. You get to do it again next turn. The second time around, of course, your opponent knows it's coming, and it's going to be cast virtually at sorcery speed long before combat happens, but it can still do whatever it needs to do. Totally fine. Not first pickable, but probably included in most white decks that I am looking for some sort of combat trick for. Next up, we have Echoes of the Kin Tree. This is a 1 and a white enchantment that doesn't do anything until you pay for it. So you can pay 2 and a white to bolster 1. as many times as you want. I've seen people talking up this card like crazy. I haven't actually seen it played yet, and I haven't played it yet. I am not on the side of this card is awesome. People are saying, oh, this is Mastery of the Unseen. This is nowhere near Mastery of the Unseen. I just don't want to be funneling mana into this to get 1+1/+1 counter here or there and not even be able to control the creature that it goes on to. I'm going to know what creature it goes on to, barring any sort of removal, but I don't get to control it. I don't get to put it on my big evasive guy. It's going to go on my piddly little 1/1 that I played, on turn 1 or 2. So I'm just not a fan of it. I'm not looking to play it. If it turns out to be broken, cool. I'll need to change my grade on this, but for now it's not all that good. Next up, we have Scaleguard Sentinels. This is a green 2/3. As an additional cost to cast Scaleguard Sentinels, you may reveal a dragon card from your hand. Scaleguard Sentinels enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it if you reveal a dragon or control a dragon when you cast it. So it could be a 3/4 for 2, which is really good. However, my original prediction of you're not going to have many dragons in your draft decks, you're going to have one, generally at most, has seemed to be pretty accurate. And I've seen big names reiterate that. I'll take credit for it. I mean, I probably wasn't the first to think about it, but I'll take credit for it. This is going to be a 2/3 for 3, 2/3 for 2 most of the time, which is still totally fine, but not first pickable for me. I would want to know that I'm going to have a bunch of dragons before I take this, and it's just simply not going to be around by the time that I know that. So, not a first pick, but still a fine card. Next up, we have Skywise Teachings. I've been thoroughly underimpressed by this card. 3 and a blue enchantment. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you can pay 1 and a blue. If you do, you get a 2/2 Flying Djinn Monk. Pretty good. A 2/2 flyer is pretty fine, and being able to do it every single time you cast a non-creature spell is great, but we've talked to death about how you don't have that many non-creature spells, and that's been my experience with this card. Just not a big fan of it. Unfortunately, a lot of bad uncommons in this pack, so let's see what the rare is. Clone Legion. 7 blue for each creature target player controls, you or your opponent. Put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that creature. So you get to double your board, or you get to copy your opponent's board. Pretty awesome ability. You're not going to be getting to 9 mana and reliably casting this, especially if your opponent has a really nice board to copy. They've probably been killing you and you're almost dead. Not a good card. You can't really take this card and expect to play it. You can take it and have fun with it, but you really can't take it and expect to be doing terribly awesome things with it. So I've got to pass on it, unfortunately. We have a foil, though. We have Learn from the Past. This is a 3 and a blue instant. Target player shuffles his or her graveyard into his or her library. Draw a card. Useless. I don't want to devote a card in my deck to this, so that's a pass as well. And we've got an island and a tip card. So that turned out to be a pretty weak pack, unfortunately. We're not taking the rare. All of our uncommons were less than ideal, I would say. And even our commons weren't that great. So I think, unfortunately, I'm going to have to narrow this down to Champion of Eroshin, which I talked about how I didn't want to first pick, but I like it. And here it is. And the Scaleguard Sentinels. I think ultimately I would take the Scaleguard Sentinels and perhaps value dragons a little bit more highly, although knowing that it's probably just going to be a 2/3 for 2. But a 2/3 for 2 is still totally fine. I would ideally want to be in a heavy green deck to make sure I'm going to hit green. But ultimately, I think it has the better upside over Champion of Eroshin. But I could hands down see taking Champion of Eroshin, especially since it is a warrior. But I'll go with the Scaleguard Sentinels here, just barely over the Champion. Definitely let me know what you would have taken out of that pack. I'm very curious. It was a very strange and somewhat weak pack, so I'm very excited to hear what people would take from it. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, as always, you can let me know in the comments below. You can also find me on Twitter at the Mana Leek. That's Leek, like the vegetable, not the card. And you can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/themanaleek. You've already found me here on YouTube. If you like the videos, definitely click that little thumbs up icon. And you should also subscribe to my channel. There's a button below the video, and there's a little link in the end of every video to subscribe. That'll keep you up to date on every Crack-a-Pack Tuesday, Wacky Wednesday, Spiky Saturday, and any other special videos that pop up here or there. It also, of course, lets me reach more people. As always, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you all next time.